The Whispering Mountain by Joan Aiken, Chapter 13. The captives in Lord Mallin's dungeons were not given any supper, nor for that matter did they receive tea, dinner, or breakfast. But about an hour after the time when breakfast ought to have been served, Garble made a round of inspection, peering through the grilles in the dungeon doors. He was disconcerted on looking into the cell occupied by Erebus and Brother Ianto to find them both still alive and well. "Odd that is," he muttered. "What has come over Gog and Magog? His lordship will not be best pleased." "Mr. Garble," Erebus called indignantly, "you must get those tiger snakes out of here. Most unsuitable accommodations for them it is, and they are not at all well with them. No proper medicine I have for them either, very poorly indeed. One of them looks, and the other one is lying on her back."
"Now that is spoken like a girl of sense and feeling,"
Mr. Hughes remarked approvingly from his cell. "Cruelty to animals is the most abhorrent, though to be sure it is only what one would expect from Lord Mallin and all of a piece with his repulsive ways." Garble, however, was extremely reluctant to enter the cell and inspect the tiger snakes at close quarters. Only the repeated demands of Erebus and the thought of how angry the Marquis would be should he return to find his pets no more finally persuaded him. Slowly and unwillingly he detached the bunch of keys from his belt and moved toward the door. At this moment, however, another door, the one leading from the cellars below into the prison lobby, burst open, and two persons erupted violently through, singing at the tops of their voices, "The bandar boy to the walls has gone in the dew. Zaville, you'll find him with his father rolled in his arm, diddle palm, and his slung behind him." "Oh, Garble, my old co," roared Prigman. "What are you a-doing, a-boggling away down here like a mulled warp? Lead us to his lordship, man. We've summat for him as he'll fair pop his glaziers at the sight of." "Aye, Sprague's the word, my barcock," agreed Bilk. "We doesn't want to keep old Stigmatical awaiting, does we? Knows. We had enough trouble ferreting out the way here along those tortive, cranksome passages of yon down below." It seemed from the two men's high spirits and the strong atmosphere of canary wine surrounding them that a major part of their route had lain through Lord Mallin's cellars. "His lordship is away from home at present," Garble said coldly. "Anything that you have for him can hold over to me." Then his eyes widened as through the gloom he caught the sparkle of the harp, which Prigman proceeded to untie from his back, but he preserved a calm demeanor and merely added, "Ah, you have done the job properly at last, I see. Let me have it then. Make haste, pray." "Ho, no, Garble, me old hodge pudding," Bilk said. "Not afore we sees the colour of his lordship's mint sauce." "Don't be impertinent. Hand over the instrument," Garble said sharply, selecting a key and moving in an unobtrusive way toward the door of an empty cell. But Prigman, instead of passing over the harp, began to plunk in a random manner at the strings, bawling out, "Hey, diddle, diddle, my merry men, let's all go to the bowsing ken," while Bilk mumbling, "Ah, you're a lovely old friend, a lovely old cough drop, Garble, me old gumboil," lurched forward and enveloped Garble in a most unwelcome embrace from which he tried in vain to extricate himself. Meanwhile, the prisoners in the cells, who had listened with the utmost interest in this exchange, were not silent. "Why," Erebus cried out when she first heard the voices of Prigman and Bilk, "those are the two thieves who stole the harp from a museum, Mr. Hughes, and I believe they have it on them now."
"Ah, the scoundrels," muttered Mr. Hughes, listening. "But where then is Owen?"
"Just dimmed, why, without a shadow of doubt, that is the harp of Teretu," sighed Brother Ianto, listening to the horrid jangle of notes produced by Prigman's inexpert hands. "Golden sound she do have, even when played by such a ribbler." "Well, well, well," cried the Seljuk, somewhat snappishly, for he had passed a miserable night in the damp little cell, kept awake by the ear-splitting snores of Mr. Hughes. "If that obnoxious peer has now procured the harp he sought, perhaps we may all be allowed to decamp
absqualutate. Show a clean pair of heels. Open the door, if you please. I demand to be put in touch with the Ruminy Council.
Mr. Garble, do something about those tiger snakes. You must, Erebus exclaimed strongly. Indeed, I will not be surprised if one of them has had its last gasp. Should it be here any longer, I will not answer for the consequences. Queer, isn't it, she added reflectively to Brother Ianto, that the smell of wintergreen disagreed with them so special, since it did you so much good. Garble, harassed by these different demands, was in a quandary, wondering how he could get the harp away from the two thieves and clap them in a cell as instructed by Lord Malin. He felt badly in need of assistance, but both turnkeys were upstairs having their dinner. Then it occurred to him that if the tiger snakes were really in such a poor way, he might use them to frighten Bilk and Prigman without running much risk himself. "Wait, then, you," he said at last, disentangling himself from Bilk's canary-scented hug. "I do not suppose you imagine Lord Malin keeps his cash in the dungeons." Wait. Lost track of whose line it was. Oh, it's Garble, okay. "Wait, then, you," he said, at last disentangling himself from Bilk's canary-scented hair. "I do not suppose you imagine Lord Malin keeps his cash in the dungeons. You will have to accompany me upstairs when I have seen to the prisoners." "Oh, very well, tol lol," replied Prigman. He had just discovered how to play the first three notes of Three Blind Mice on the harp of Terra 2, so he burst into song again. "They all ran after the Ham and Beck, who cut off their tails with a famble-schneck." "Stop making that atrocious noise," snapped Garble. He stepped up to Brother Ianto's cell and peered through the grill again, vainly trying to see the snakes which were just inside the door. Then he called, "I am coming in to inspect the reptiles. Stand well away from the entrance. I have a blunderbuss with me and shall not hesitate to shoot." This was quite untrue, but he hoped that if cowed by the threat, Erebus and Brother Ianto stood well back, he would have time to whip in, grab the ailing snakes, and out again before they could either hinder him or try to escape. As his key rattled in the lock, Erebus, standing by the narrow little window, received one of the greatest shocks of her life. Owen's face appeared outside, with Hawk hovering just behind him. He laid a finger on his lips, and Erebus remained silent, though her mouth and eyes were wide open with amazement. Owen pulled himself up, balanced a moment with his hands on the sill, then pushed a knee over and slipped neatly inside, panting a little. "Would you mind holding my glasses a moment, sir?" he whispered to Brother Ianto, who was chuckling quietly to himself. Hawk, who had flown in after Owen, took frightful exception to the tiger snakes and began hissing and heckling at them in a manner which they, poor things, were too low-spirited to resent. "The harp!" breathed Erebus. "Bilk and Prigman have it just over there." She pointed to the door. Owen nodded and stole over to stand flattened against the wall. Not that he needed to be all that quiet, for Prigman was now caroling, "Hey diddle diddle, up on the pillin, who's the old mort in the scarlet mandilin?" While Bilk did a kind of clumping step dance all round him, Garble turned the key, opened the door, and stepped briskly inside. As he did so, and while his attention, after a brief glance at the two captives, was fixed on the snakes, Owen, like a shadow, slipped through the doorway behind him, removing the key from the lock as he passed. Owen's intention had been to take Bilk and Prigman by surprise, snatch the harp, run back into the cell, and lock the door, but this plan was thrown into confusion by the sudden and unexpected arrival of Abapol, who shot in through the cell window like something fired from a catapult, dashed past the astounded Garble, through the cell door, flung himself at Prigman, kicking, biting, and scratching his face, grabbed the harp, and was away through the open cellar door before either of the two thieves had the presence of mind to stop him. "Dang me!" gasped Prigman, rubbing his half-blinded eyes. "The little Turk! He's fair clampered me! After him, Bilk! Stir your strosses, man!" But Owen had tackled Bilk from behind, tripping and throwing him to the ground, effectively preventing him from pursuing Abapol until the fiery little man was well away with the harp.
What in Beelzebub's name is going on here? Exclaimed Garble, rushing back out of the cell and searching in vain for his keys, which Owen had pocketed. He began trying to drag apart the struggling Owen and Bilk.
Never mind them, fool, the harp, gasped Prigman at last, getting his eyes open and staggering after Abapol. Bilk rolled away from Owen's grasp and followed. Garble hesitated a moment, trying to decide which would anger Lord Malin more, to lose his prisoners or the harp, which had seemed so nearly secured. He decided on the harp and set off after Bilk. Erebus and Brother Ianto, finding no one there to stop them, came warily from their cell, stepping over the dozy tiger snakes. "Thank goodness you are safe. Yehimelech told me you were here, and Hawk led me to the right cell," Owen said, giving Erebus a quick hug. "Here are the keys. Let out the others. I can't wait. I must go after that dratted little Abapol, or they'll make mincemeat of him. I had no notion he was behind me. Follow down. Oh, thank you, Brother Ianto."
He received his glasses back and disappeared at top speed. "Well, there's a thing," said Erebus. "Who would have expected it?"
"Oh, not a bit surprised I am," Brother Ianto said cheerfully. "Always thought there was more in that boy than he knew himself. Well, best to go out of here, maybe before anybody upstairs notices what is going on." He went methodically round the cell doors, unlocking them all. The prisoners were only too glad to make off down through the cellars, without waiting for explanations, all except old Mr. Hughes. "What in the name of goodness is going on here?" that gentleman demanded. "Where is the harp now? What have those two rascals done with it? Was not that my grandson's voice I heard? Did I not say that he was somehow involved in this murky business?"
"Oh, go and eat flummery,"
snapped Erebus, at the end of her patience. Then she collected herself and added politely,
"Your grandson, Mr. Hughes, have just rescued us all by climbing a 600-foot cliff, and if you have sense, you will not be standing here chewing the rag, but will bustle out from here before any more trouble will arrive, is it?"
"Oh, yes, certainly," agreed the Seljuk. Erebus had to suppress a gasp of horrified amusement at the sight of his devastated mustaches. "Let us cut our stick, walk our chalk, slip our cable, before that detestable nobleman returns hither." Without more delay, they set off after Owen. Though Erebus was conscience-stricken about leaving the tiger snakes.
"Since it was my oil of wintergreen that upset the poor things," she said. "But surely to goodness somebody will come down before long. There must be someone in that great castful of folk can spare time to look for such a fine pair of snakes."
Mr. Hughes still wanted an explanation. "You say my grandson rescued us?" he demanded, panting, as they ran down endless flights of stairs. "So who has the harp? Where is it now?"
"I am thinking that queer little fellow who climbed in after Owen will have made off with it," Erebus said. "Abapol, Owen called him." Then she suddenly stood still, putting her hands to her head, and exclaimed, "Abapol! Where was the sense with me? He will be the one who stole the harp from where Bilk and Prigman left it. And then, somehow, the thieves will have got it off him. And now he has snatched it back. Good luck to him!"
This was meaningless to Mr. Hughes, but the Seljuk pricked up his ears. "Abapol, who is this person, my dear young friend, companion, fellow fugitive?" As he asked, the little party came down the last flight of steps and through an open door into the great cave where the central heating pipes rose from the Malin River. But the hall was not empty now, regardless of the fact that day was now well advanced. About a score of children of the pit were groped there in a ring. They all clutched golden weapons that would have made Lord Malin wild with envy. They were being given orders by Yehimelech, who, splendidly dressed in black and gold, looked thin and pale, but every inch a hereditary foreman. And we will pause there.